Think about the last time life threw something unexpected your way. Maybe it was a sudden setback at work, a personal disappointment, or just the weight of daily stress piling up. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, as if the world is spinning too fast to keep up. But what if I told you there's a 2,000-year-old philosophy that holds the keys to not just surviving these moments, but thriving through them? Stoicism, the ancient wisdom practiced by emperors and slaves alike, offers something rare, a way to cultivate unshakable calm in the chaos of modern life. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king who ruled Rome during some of its most turbulent years, put it simply: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That's the heart of Stoic resilience. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending life is perfect. It's about recognizing what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your responses, and letting go of the rest. Imagine facing challenges with a clarity that cuts through the noise, a steadiness that doesn't depend on circumstances. That's what this video is about: how Stoic principles like acceptance, emotional discipline, and focusing on what's truly within your power can transform the way you navigate uncertainty, stress, and even adversity. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're tools, tested by time and honed by generations of thinkers who faced wars, plagues, and personal tragedies far greater than most of us will ever encounter. So why does Stoicism matter today? Because the world hasn't changed as much as we think. The distractions might be digital now, the pressures more fast-paced, but the core human experience, fear, frustration, the search for meaning, remains the same. The Stoics understood something profound. Resilience isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about meeting it with a mindset that turns obstacles into opportunities. Over the next minutes, we'll explore how their timeless practices can help you build that mindset, one deliberate step at a time. Whether you're dealing with daily stressors or deeper struggles, this isn't just philosophy, it's a roadmap to living with purpose, peace, and a quiet strength that no outside force can shake. Ready to begin? Let's dive in. At the heart of Stoic resilience is this simple but radical idea: some things are up to us and some things are not. The philosopher Epictetus, born a slave and later one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, drew a line between what he called the internals, our judgments, desires, and actions, and the externals, everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, traffic, the past, even our own bodies. When we confuse the two, when we waste energy fighting what we can't change or neglecting what we can, that's when anxiety takes root. But here's the shift: serene resilience grows when we stop trying to control the storm and start steadying ourselves within it. Picture a tall oak tree in a fierce wind. Its branches sway, leaves rustle, but the trunk holds firm, not because it resists the storm, but because it adapts to forces beyond its control. That's the Stoic approach. The tree doesn't waste energy raging against the wind. It bends so it won't break, and that's where your power lies, in your response. When a project falls through, when someone lets you down, even when life feels unfair, the Stoic question isn't, "Why is this happening to me?" It's, "What can I do with this?" That subtle reframe changes everything. Anxiety shrinks when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as someone who chooses how to meet those circumstances. So where do most of us get stuck? Often, it's in resisting acceptance. We cling to how things should be, or we replay old mistakes, wishing we'd acted differently. But Stoicism invites a liberating alternative. Focus on the present moment, exactly as it is, and ask, what's mine to do here? Maybe it's letting go of a grudge you've carried too long. Maybe it's finally admitting you can't please everyone. Or maybe it's something as simple as taking a deep breath when the train's delayed instead of simmering in frustration. Try this today. Pick one area where you've been fighting reality, a relationship tension, a work challenge, even a personal habit. For just a moment, stop arguing with it. See it clearly without judgment and ask, is this within my control? If not, imagine setting it down like a heavy bag you've been carrying unnecessarily. If it is within your control, take one small step forward. That's serene resilience in action, not the absence of storms, but the ability to stand steady within them. Epictetus didn't just teach the dichotomy of control, he lived it. Born into slavery, he knew first, and how little power we truly have over external events. Yet he became one of history's most influential thinkers, proving that freedom isn't about circumstance, it's about where we place our attention. His famous handbook, the Enchiridion, opens with a truth so simple it stings. Some things are within our power, while others are not. That line alone could save us years of needless frustration if we took it to heart. Consider how often we invert this wisdom in daily life. We white-knuckle the steering wheel in traffic, as if our anger could unclog the highway. We replay awkward conversations, wishing we'd said something wittier. We refresh social media, hungry for validation from people whose opinions don't pay our bills. These aren't just habits, they're rebellions against reality, attempts to control what was never ours to command. The Stoic remedy isn't passivity, it's precision. Like a surgeon distinguishing between healthy tissue and disease, we must learn to separate what's ours to shape from what we must accept. History offers a masterclass in this through Seneca, the Stoic philosopher exiled by Emperor Claudius. Banished to Corsica, a place he described as a barren rock, he could have crumbled into bitterness. Instead, he wrote letters that reframed exile as liberation. Wherever I go, I carry my own mind with me. He studied philosophy, composed tragedies, and later returned to Rome wiser. His suffering didn't vanish, but his relationship to it transformed. That's the alchemy of the dichotomy of control. It turns helplessness into agency by redirecting effort from what happened to what happens next. Modern life bombards us with illusions of control. We curate online personas, micromanage schedules, and chase metrics that promise happiness but deliver anxiety. The Stoics would ask, how much of this truly serves you? When you obsess over a colleague's criticism or a missed promotion, you're handing them the keys to your inner peace. But when you focus on your preparation, your integrity, your next thoughtful action, that's where real power lies. So here's a challenge. Pick one area where you've been pouring energy into the unchangeable. Maybe it's a family member's stubborn habits or the relentless pace of your industry. Now imagine handing that concern back to the universe, like returning a library book you've overstudied. What remains? Only what you can actually influence, your attitude, your effort, your willingness to adapt. That shift, from wrestling with the world to mastering your response, is where Stoic serenity begins. Now imagine looking at every twist of fate, every disappointment, every unexpected turn, and not just accepting it but loving it. This is the heart of what the Stoics called amor fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. It's the radical practice of embracing whatever life brings, not with resignation, but with a kind of fierce gratitude. Friedrich Nietzsche, centuries later, would borrow this idea, calling it his formula for greatness. But long before him, Marcus Aurelius was writing in his private journal, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Think about that for a moment. The very obstacles we curse could be the stepping stones we've been waiting for. Take Marcus himself. As emperor, he faced rebellions, plagues, betrayals, yet his writings reveal a man who saw each challenge as raw material for growth. When a trusted general turned against him, he didn't dwell on the betrayal, he examined his own judgment. When illness swept through Rome, he didn't despair, he focused on what he could do to alleviate suffering. This wasn't denial, it was a deliberate choice to find the hidden gift in hardship. Modern life tests us in different ways. Maybe you've lost a job, only to discover it pushed you toward work that truly aligns with your values. Maybe an injury forced you to slow down, revealing the unsustainable pace you'd been keeping. Even small frustrations, a cancelled flight, a missed opportunity, can become teachers if we let them. The key isn't to pretend these things don't hurt, but to ask, what can this reveal? What strength might it uncover? Here's a practice to try. Think of one recent setback, something that initially felt like a defeat. Now imagine it held a secret purpose, one you couldn't see at the time. Maybe that failed project taught you a skill you now use daily. Maybe a painful breakup cleared space for a relationship that nourishes you. Amor fati isn't about slapping a smile on hardship. It's about trusting that life's detours might be leading you somewhere necessary. This mindset transforms how we walk through the world. Traffic jam, a chance to pause and reflect. Criticism, a mirror showing where growth waits. Even grief, as wrenching as it is, becomes part of the love we carry forward. The Stoics knew what modern science now confirms. We don't control events, but we shape their meaning. And when we stop fighting reality and start partnering with it, something shifts. The weight lightens, the path clarifies. We begin to see obstacles not as interruptions to our story, but as the very fabric of it. There's a Stoic exercise that might sound counterintuitive at first, deliberately imagining the worst that could happen. The ancient Romans called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca wrote about it often, advising his friends to rehearse in their minds exile, torture, war, shipwreck. At first glance, this seems bleak, even morbid. Why dwell on disaster when modern self-help tells us to visualize success? But the Stoics weren't pessimists, they were realists. They understood something profound. When we confront our fears head-on, they lose their power to shock us. Picture this. You're about to give a big presentation, and the thought of forgetting your lines or facing tough questions makes your palms sweat. Most of us try to push those fears away, clinging to the hope that everything will go perfectly. But Seneca would say that's the mistake. By refusing to look at the worst-case scenario, we give it the power to paralyze us. Instead, he'd tell you to sit quietly and imagine it all. The stumbles, the silence, the critical feedback, not to dwell in despair, but to ask, if this happened, could I handle it? And the answer is almost always yes. Modern culture often treats discomfort like a glitch to be fixed. Think of the endless productivity hacks or the way we numb ourselves with distractions. But the Stoics knew that avoiding discomfort only makes it stronger. Negative visualization isn't about expecting the worst, it's about vaccinating your mind against panic. When you've already walked through the scenario in your head, the real thing feels familiar, manageable. Soldiers train this way. Athletes visualize missed shots or falls before competition. The goal isn't to manifest failure, it's to build resilience so that no outcome catches you unprepared. Let's try it right now. Close your eyes, or keep them open if you prefer, and think of something you're anxious about. Maybe it's a difficult conversation you've been avoiding or a project that might fail. Now imagine the worst possible version of it unfolding. Sit with that feeling for a moment. Notice how your body reacts, then ask yourself, what's one step I could take to move forward, even in this scenario? That's the hidden gift of this practice. Once you've faced the worst, you realize you're still standing, and suddenly the problem feels smaller than the fear surrounding it. Seneca put it best: "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. By mentally rehearsing life's stumbles, we stop fearing them and start seeing them as part of the journey. The presentation might still go poorly. The conversation might be tough, but you'll meet those moments not with panic, but with the quiet confidence of someone who's already walked through the fire and found their footing on the other side. One of the most striking examples of Stoic perception comes from Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who faced crushing political defeats with something unexpected: laughter. When his bid for consul ended in humiliation, with voters literally throwing garbage at him, his friends found him strolling through the market, utterly composed. When they asked how he could smile after such disgrace, he simply said, "Do you not see how absurd it is to take seriously what the crowd thinks?" That moment captures the essence of the Stoic discipline of perception, not denying pain, but refusing to let it distort reality. Cato didn't pretend the loss didn't sting. He chose to see it through a lens of humor and perspective, recognizing that his worth wasn't tied to an election or the fickleness of public opinion. This ancient practice has a modern counterpart, one we often get backwards. Psychologists call it catastrophizing, the habit of magnifying setbacks into doomsday scenarios. A missed deadline becomes proof you'll lose your job. A disagreement spirals into "they'll never speak to me again." The Stoics would spot the pattern immediately. We're not seeing events clearly, we're seeing them through a filter of fear. The remedy isn't empty reassurance like "don't worry," but a deliberate recalibration. Ask yourself, how much of this pain comes from what actually happened, and how much from the story I'm telling myself about it? Here's where the Stoic tool of temporal framing helps. Imagine looking back at your current struggle from 5 years in the future. That argument with your partner, the project that didn't go as planned, will they still feel like earth-shattering disasters, or will they have faded into the background of a larger, richer story? This isn't about minimizing real pain. It's about distinguishing between temporary discomfort and true catastrophe. The bills piling up feel like an emergency, but history shows you've navigated tight budgets before. The criticism from your boss feels like a career ender, but experience reminds you that growth often comes through uncomfortable feedback. Cato's laughter wasn't indifference, it was defiance. A refusal to let external events dictate his inner world. And that's the invitation here, to examine where you might be unintentionally amplifying adversity through the stories you attach to it. When your mind races to worst-case scenarios, pause and ask, is this truly irreversible, or am I granting it more power than it deserves? The Stoics didn't avoid hard truths. They sharpened their ability to see them clearly without the distortion of panic or pride. Try this today. Identify one situation where your perception might be magnifying the struggle. Write down the bare facts, just what happened without interpretation. Then, beneath it, write the story you've been telling yourself about it. Finally, imagine a future version of you looking back with compassion and perspective. What might they say about this moment? Often, you'll find the gap between fact and narrative is where resilience is born. Because adversity doesn't diminish when we ignore it. It shrinks when we meet it with clear eyes and the quiet confidence of someone who knows storms pass. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in his private journal, "Concentrate every minute like a Roman, like a man, on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." That's Stoic mindfulness in its purest form, not some abstract meditation technique, but a fierce commitment to being fully alive in the present moment. The Stoics weren't just philosophers, they were pioneers of attention training, long before the digital age turned distraction into an epidemic. Think about how often we fracture our focus, scrolling through news feeds during conversations, rehearsing tomorrow's worries while making dinner, or mentally rewriting past mistakes instead of engaging with what's right here. The Stoics would call this a theft of life itself. What makes their approach so powerful is its simplicity. Unlike modern mindfulness apps that promise peace through complex breathing patterns or guided visualizations, Stoic presence is about ordinary moments made extraordinary by sheer attentiveness. When Epictetus taught his students, he didn't ask them to sit cross-legged for hours. He told them to practice focus while washing dishes, walking through crowds, or even during political debates. The goal wasn't to escape reality, but to plunge deeper into it. This mirrors what psychologists now call flow, that state where time dissolves because you're so immersed in the task at hand. The difference: flow happens by accident. Stoic mindfulness is cultivated by choice. Consider how opposite this is to our current relationship with time. We treat attention like a currency, spending it recklessly on autoplay videos and endless notifications, then wonder why we feel bankrupt at day's end. Marcus Aurelius faced similar distractions: court intrigues, military campaigns, the weight of empire, yet his remedy wasn't withdrawal, but radical presence. Don't let your reflection on the whole sweep of life crush you, he wrote. Don't fill your mind with all the bad things that might still happen. That's not passive acceptance, it's active focus. He's describing what we now know about the brain. Anxiety thrives in the future, regret lives in the past, but peace exists only now. Here's where Stoicism offers a surprisingly practical tool for modern overwhelm: the attention anchor. Pick one routine activity, something you do daily without thinking, like brewing coffee or waiting for an elevator, and transform it into a mindfulness ritual. When the kettle whistles, feel the warmth of the mug in your hands. Notice the steam rising in delicate curls. Taste the bitterness on your tongue. This isn't just about savoring coffee. It's about retraining your mind to inhabit the present like a sacred space. The Stoics knew what neuroscience confirms. Repeated moments of focus rewire the brain's default setting from distraction to engagement. Digital interruptions aren't going away, but your relationship to them can. Next time your phone buzzes, channel Epictetus, pause and ask, is this notification more deserving of my life than my own breath? That tiny gap between stimulus and response is where Stoic freedom lies. Because presence isn't something you find, it's something you protect, one anchored moment at a time. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but this breath, this heartbeat, this ordinary miracle of being alive, that's where philosophy becomes practice and mindfulness becomes mastery. Marcus Aurelius didn't just write philosophy, he lived it through ink and parchment. His personal journals, later published as meditations, weren't meant for public eyes. They were raw, unfiltered conversations with himself, a practice of nightly reflection that turned ordinary moments into profound lessons. Imagine the most powerful man in Rome, ruler of an empire, sitting by lamplight to ask, "Where did I stumble today? What could I have done better?" That's the essence of Stoic journaling, not just recording events, but excavating their meaning. Your own journal doesn't need eloquence or grandeur. It needs honesty. Start with two simple questions each evening. What was truly within my control today? And where did I hand my peace to circumstances? The first reveals your agency. Maybe you chose to listen deeply in a heated conversation, or resisted the urge to refresh your inbox for the 10th time. The second exposes where reactions overtook reason. Perhaps you snapped at a loved one over something trivial or wasted hours worrying about a decision that hasn't even arrived. The goal isn't self-judgment, it's calibration. Like a gardener pruning dead branches, you're clearing away what clouds your clarity. Marcus's entries often read like gentle corrections to himself. You don't have to turn this into drama. You can choose not to be harmed. Notice the tone firm but compassionate. That's key. Stoic journaling isn't about berating yourself for imperfections. It's about spotting patterns and adjusting course. When you write, "I lost patience in the meeting," follow it with, "Next time I'll pause before speaking." That tiny shift from regret to resolve turns reflection into growth. Try this tonight. Set aside 10 minutes, no more, and divide your page into 3 columns. In the first, note one challenge you faced. In the second, list what was genuinely yours to influence in that moment. In the third, jot down one small adjustment for tomorrow. Maybe today's frustration came from expecting a colleague to read your mind. The control column reminds you could have communicated clearly. The adjustment: next time, voice your needs without waiting for them to guess. There's a reason this practice endured for millennia. Writing slows the whirlwind of thoughts, letting you see your life as a Stoic would, not as a series of random events, but as a classroom where every moment offers a lesson. The traffic jam teaches patience. The difficult coworker trains diplomacy. Even exhaustion becomes a signal to respect your limits. Your journal isn't just a record, it's a mirror showing where your power truly lies. And like Marcus, you might find that the quiet act of putting pen to paper becomes the day's most grounding ritual. There's a persistent myth that Stoicism means shutting off your emotions, that to be resilient, you must become as unfeeling as stone. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoics weren't against emotion, they were against being ruled by it. Seneca, the philosopher who counseled Emperor Nero, wrote an entire essay titled On Mercy, arguing that true strength isn't hardness, it's the ability to act with compassion while maintaining inner stability. He described mercy as the tempering of justice with kindness, a virtue that balances empathy with wisdom. Picture a surgeon performing an operation. Their hands must be steady, but their heart must care deeply about the person on the table. That's Stoic compassion in action, firm yet tender, engaged yet grounded. Consider the modern challenge of caregiver burnout. Someone tending to a chronically ill loved one might pour every ounce of their energy into helping, only to collapse under the weight of exhaustion. The Stoic approach wouldn't be to detach coldly, nor would it be to sacrifice oneself completely. Instead, it would ask, how can I serve from a place of strength rather than depletion? Seneca would remind us that even mercy has limits, not because compassion is finite, but because you can't pour from an empty cup. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's what allows you to sustain care over time. The Stoic caregiver might say, I will visit my mother for 2 hours each evening, fully present, rather than staying until resentment builds. They'd recognize that rest isn't neglect, it's what makes genuine kindness possible. This tension between opening your heart and protecting your peace plays out everywhere. A manager navigating a team crisis must balance understanding with decisiveness. A friend supporting someone through grief needs to listen deeply without absorbing their pain as their own. Even parenting requires this dance, loving your child fiercely while resisting the urge to shield them from every discomfort, because growth often lies just beyond ease. The Stoics called this the distinction between sympatheia, shared feeling, and apatheia, freedom from destructive passions. You can mourn with someone without being swallowed by their sorrow. You can advocate for justice without burning out in rage. So where does this leave us in practice? Start by asking Seneca's question, where can I soften my heart without losing footing? Maybe it's in that difficult conversation where you choose to listen before reacting. Maybe it's in recognizing when your urge to fix someone's problem actually robs them of the chance to grow. Or maybe it's as simple as pausing before you send that heated email, asking whether your words will heal or harm. Stoic compassion isn't about indifference, it's about responding to the world with both warmth and wisdom, like a lantern that sheds light without burning itself out. History offers a quiet example in Thracia Petus, a Roman senator who opposed Nero's tyranny not with grand gestures, but with small, steadfast acts of kindness, sheltering political exiles, speaking truth in whispers when shouts were too dangerous. When he was eventually sentenced to death, he spent his final evening discussing philosophy with friends, comforting them even as he faced his own end. That's the paradox of Stoic empathy. It's strong enough to hold suffering without crumbling, tender enough to remind others they're not alone. In a world that often mistakes cynicism for strength and self-sacrifice for virtue, this ancient wisdom whispers a better way to care deeply but with eyes wide open. Imagine waking up one winter morning and choosing the coldest shower possible, not because the hot water's broken, but because you want to. Or sitting down to dinner and deliberately skipping your favorite dish, not for health reasons, but to remind yourself that you can. These might sound like odd choices in a world obsessed with convenience, but they're part of an ancient Stoic practice called voluntary discomfort, a way to train the mind by embracing small, deliberate hardships. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who believed philosophy wasn't just for lecture halls but for everyday life, put it bluntly: how can anyone develop toughness if they only seek what's pleasant? The logic is simple yet revolutionary. By occasionally stepping away from comfort, we prove to ourselves that happiness doesn't depend on external conditions. It's not about punishing the body, it's about freeing the mind. Think of it like mental weightlifting. Just as muscles grow stronger under resistance, your resilience builds when you willingly face minor discomforts. The Stoics weren't advocating for suffering, they were dismantling fear. When you've stood under icy water by choice, a sudden power outage or a broken air conditioner stops feeling like a crisis. When you've fasted for a day, a delayed meal becomes an exercise in patience, not panic. Modern life, with its endless conveniences, has quietly eroded this skill. We've created a world where discomfort is treated like a system error, something to be fixed immediately. Thermostats adjust before we feel a chill. Groceries arrive with a tap. Streaming services buffer seamlessly. None of these are bad, but when we never practice choosing discomfort, we risk becoming prisoners of comfort. The moment life forces hardship upon us, a job loss, a health scare, a financial strain, we crumble because we've lost the ability to adapt. Here's where Musonius Rufus' teachings shine. He didn't just preach simplicity, he lived it, even as Rome's elite mocked his rough cloak and modest meals. His students, wealthy nobles accustomed to luxury, were assigned manual labor, not as punishment, but to reconnect with the dignity of effort. He knew something we often forget: comfort is safest when it's a choice, not a necessity. So how do we reintroduce this practice today? Start small. Skip the sugar in your coffee tomorrow, not because it's unhealthy, but to remind yourself that pleasure is optional, not mandatory. Leave your phone behind during a walk, not to disconnect, but to rediscover the art of being alone with your thoughts. Each time you resist a minor craving or convenience, you're strengthening a mental muscle far more important than willpower: the ability to distinguish between want and need. This isn't about austerity, it's about autonomy. When you voluntarily step into discomfort, you're no longer at the mercy of life's inevitable rough patches. You've already walked through them on your own terms, and that's the ultimate freedom: not needing everything to be easy, just knowing you can handle it when it's not. Marcus Aurelius kept a gratitude list, not of possessions or achievements, but of people. In his Meditations, the first chapter isn't about grand philosophies. It's a tribute to the mentors who shaped him. His grandfather's steady temper, his father's quiet integrity, his teacher's patience. These weren't just memories. They were living lessons he carried into battles and throne rooms. The Stoics understood something we often forget. Resilience isn't just built through solitary reflection. It's cultivated by surrounding yourself with voices that call you higher. Compare that to today's cultural diet, where attention often goes to the loudest, flashiest figures, celebrity gossip, viral influencers, outrage peddlers. There's nothing wrong with entertainment, but ask yourself, who are you letting shape your mind? The Stoics would urge you to be ruthless about this. Just as you'd avoid feeding your body only junk food, why would you feed your soul only what's fleeting? This isn't about elitism, it's about intentionality. When Epictetus taught in a humble classroom rather than a marble hall, he was making a statement. Wisdom doesn't need spotlights to matter. Think of Admiral James Stockdale, the U.S. pilot shot down over Vietnam who survived 7 years as a prisoner of war. In his darkest moments, he drew strength from Epictetus' teachings, not as abstract ideas, but as a lifeline. Years later, he'd say Stoicism didn't just help him endure, it helped him return with his humanity intact. That's the power of virtuous influence. It doesn't just comfort you, it fortifies you. So here's a challenge. Identify one person, living or historical, whose resilience lights a path for you. Maybe it's a grandparent who weathered hardships with grace, a colleague who faces chronic illness with humor, or a historical figure like Harriet Tubman, who risked everything while saying, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." Study their lives not to idolize them, but to reverse engineer their courage. How did they reframe obstacles? What habits sustained them? Curate your influences like a gardener tending soil. Follow the social media accounts that leave you energized, not drained. Read biographies of people who have faced adversity with creativity rather than bitterness. And when you find yourself slipping into comparison or despair, ask Marcus' question, what would my mentor do here? Not because they were perfect, but because their struggles mirror yours, and their choices show what's possible. Resilience is contagious. Surround yourself with those who have learned to stand steady, and you'll find your own footing grows stronger. Zeno of Citium was a wealthy merchant until the day a shipwreck erased everything: his cargo, his fortune, his entire livelihood. Stranded in Athens with nothing but the clothes on his back, he wandered into a bookstore where the works of Socrates captivated him. That disaster, which could have been his ruin, became the birthplace of Stoic philosophy. There's a profound lesson here. Sometimes the very event that shatters your plans forces you onto a path you wouldn't have chosen but desperately needed. The Stoics called this principle antifragility, the idea that certain things don't just endure chaos, they thrive because of it. Think of a reed bending in a storm. It doesn't resist the wind, it uses the tension to grow stronger at the broken places. That's the antifragile mindset, not just bouncing back from adversity, but transforming it into fuel. Modern psychology echoes this with post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where people emerge from hardship with deeper resilience, renewed purpose, or stronger relationships. Consider how the pandemic reshaped lives. Some saw careers vanish overnight, only to discover hidden passions in baking, coding, or caregiving. Others found that remote work, though initially disruptive, granted freedom to relocate or reclaim family time. These aren't silver linings, they're proof that disruption can reorient us toward what truly matters. So how do we cultivate this mindset? Start by reframing the question. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can this make possible?" When a layoff strips away the identity tied to a job title, it might reveal latent talents buried under routine. When a failed relationship leaves you heartbroken, it could carve space for self-discovery you'd postponed for years. Even small setbacks, a rejected proposal, a missed promotion, can act as signposts pointing toward unseen opportunities. The key isn't to pretend the pain isn't real, but to treat it as raw material. Take the story of a graphic designer who lost her biggest client during an economic downturn. At first, it felt like a disaster until she used the sudden free time to experiment with animation, a skill she'd always wanted to learn. Within a year, she'd pivoted to motion graphics, landing projects that excited her far more than her previous work. The loss didn't just teach resilience, it rewired her trajectory. That's antifragility in action. When the universe closes a door, you don't just find a window, you build a new house. Now look at your own life. What obstacle have you been resisting as if it's an enemy? Could it be, in some way you haven't yet glimpsed, an ally? Maybe that financial squeeze is forcing you to creative solutions you'd never consider in comfort. Maybe the project that fell apart is protecting you from a path that would have drained your soul. Zeno's shipwreck didn't just lead him to philosophy. It freed him from a life that might have left his deepest questions unasked. Your storms might be doing the same, not destroying your path, but revealing one you were meant to walk all along. Epictetus once observed, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." That simple anatomy lesson holds a radical challenge for our modern world, where silence feels like empty space waiting to be filled, especially when every screen invites us to broadcast instant reactions. Stoic silence isn't about never speaking. It's about recognizing that words hold weight, and careless speech can unravel relationships, reputations, and even inner peace. The discipline of measured speech begins with a question the Stoics ask daily. Is what I'm about to say true, necessary, and kind? 3 filters, each one a gatekeeper against impulsive chatter. True means you've verified it, not just felt it. Necessary asks whether silence might serve better. Kind doesn't mean sugarcoating, it means asking if your words will build up or tear down. Consider how often we bypass these filters today. Social media rewards hot takes over thoughtful reflection, turning disagreements into performative battles. A friend shares an opinion you disagree with, and fingers fly across the keyboard before the mind fully engages. Later, you might regret the tone or realize you misunderstood their point, but the words are already loose in the world. The Stoics would call this self-inflicted harm. Every time we speak without intention, we're not just risking external consequences, we're training our minds to prioritize speed over wisdom. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger practiced deliberate silence so rigorously that when senators tried to provoke him with insults, his unshaken calm made their outbursts look childish by contrast. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was a display of strength under control. Here's where this ancient practice collides with modern urgency. Neuroscience shows that pausing before speaking creates a buffer between stimulus and response, allowing the prefrontal cortex, the brain's reasoning center, to catch up with the emotional amygdala. That split-second delay is where Stoic wisdom lives. Try this today. In your next conversation, pause for 5 full seconds before replying, not as a dramatic silence, but as a space to ask Epictetus 3 questions. You'll notice something surprising. Most impulsive remarks lose their urgency when held up to the light of scrutiny. The colleague who dismisses your idea might reveal a valid concern if you probe gently instead of reacting defensively. The family debate about politics could shift from argument to dialogue if someone chooses curiosity over victory. Stoic silence also guards against a subtler thief of peace, unnecessary explanation. How often do we over-clarify, over-justify, or overshare, not because it serves the conversation, but because we crave validation? Seneca warned against this when he wrote, "Wild animals run from the dangers they see, and once they have escaped, they worry no more." But we torture ourselves over what is to come and what has passed. The same applies to speech, rehashing grievances, rehearsing comebacks for past confrontations, or anxiously scripting future conversations, all are forms of mental chatter that drain present moment clarity. The challenge isn't to become mute, but to let silence become your ally. Before your next meeting, experiment with listening not to reply, but to understand. Notice how often your mind jumps to formulate responses while others are still speaking. That gap between hearing and truly receiving is where misunderstandings breed. Ancient teachers trained students in the art of paraphrase, repeating back what someone said before adding their own thoughts, not as a technique, but as a discipline of humility. It forces you to confront whether you actually heard or just waited for your turn. Practical silence extends beyond conversations. Try leaving your phone on silent for an hour each morning, not as a digital detox, but as a reminder that not every thought deserves amplification. Write that fiery email, then save it as a draft overnight. You'll often find the emotion that fueled it has evaporated by dawn. The Stoics knew what we often forget. Speech is a tool, and like any tool, its power depends on the hand that wields it. Used carelessly, it can fracture. Used with intention, it can build bridges, starting with the one between your impulses and your wisdom. Seneca called anger a brief madness, a fire that burns the hand of whoever holds it. In his essay on anger, he describes a Roman emperor so consumed by rage that he gnawed at the edge of his own ivory throne until his teeth cracked. That image isn't just dramatic, it's a mirror. Because while most of us aren't biting furniture, we've all felt that surge of heat when someone cuts us off in traffic or leaves a snarky comment online. The Stoic approach to anger isn't about suppression. It's about recognizing it as a choice we unknowingly make, one that costs us far more than it costs anyone else. Modern life gives anger endless fuel. Road rage turns a 10-minute delay into a screaming match. Social media algorithms reward outrage, turning debates into boxing matches where no one wins but everyone bleeds. Seneca would say these aren't modern problems, they're human problems wearing new costumes. His remedy was what Stoics call the view from above, mentally zooming out to ask, will this matter in a month? A year, picture yourself looking down on the situation like a bird soaring over a city. That driver who merged without signaling, the co-worker who took credit for your idea. From this height, they're specks in a much larger landscape. The anger that felt so urgent suddenly seems small, almost absurd. Here's the twist: the view from above isn't just about minimizing problems, it's about reclaiming agency. Seneca observed that anger often masks helplessness. We lash out when we feel powerless, but when you pause to ask, what part of this can I actually control, the energy shifts. Maybe you can't change the traffic, but you can choose a podcast that makes the delay enjoyable. You can't force someone to retract a rude comment, but you can decide whether to dignify it with a response. Anger thrives on the illusion that reacting is the only option. The Stoic alternative, responding instead of reacting. Try this experiment next time anger flares. Grab a notebook and write the cutting remark you're itching to say. Then set it aside for 20 minutes. Come back and read it aloud. You'll often find the words feel hollow, more about ego than justice. Writing creates a buffer between impulse and action, letting you spot the difference between asserting a boundary and feeding a tantrum. Seneca's student Nero could have used this practice. Instead of scribing his rage, he acted on it, with consequences history still remembers. The deeper lesson on anger isn't just about avoiding outbursts, it's about questioning why we combust so easily. Is it really the slow cashier that angers us, or the unmet expectation that life should flow smoothly? Is the online troll the problem, or our own craving to be universally understood? Modern psychology calls this cognitive appraisal, the stories we attach to events. The Stoics called it assent. every time we feel anger, we've unconsciously agreed to a narrative: this shouldn't be happening. But what if we revoked that agreement? Consider the last time you witnessed someone else's anger, a stranger yelling at a barrister, perhaps. Notice how, from the outside, their reaction often seems disproportionate to the offense. That's the gift of perspective. Now imagine applying that same clarity to your own triggers. It doesn't mean ignoring injustice or becoming a doormat. It means directing your energy where it can actually build rather than burn. As Seneca put it, no tree becomes rooted and sturdy unless many winds blow against it. The winds will come. The question is whether you'll let them strengthen you or let them knock you down. There's a quiet power in recognizing when enough is enough, not as resignation, but as liberation. Stoic gratitude isn't about plastering a smile over life's difficulties or chanting empty affirmations. It's the practice of seeing what you already have as sufficient, even while striving for more. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who ate the same simple meals as his students, once said, "To crave luxuries is to be poorer for having them." He wasn't preaching deprivation. He was pointing to a paradox. The more we tie happiness to external additions, the more we subtract from our capacity to appreciate what's already here. This stands in stark contrast to toxic positivity, which insists every cloud has a silver lining, even when storms rage. Stoicism doesn't deny the clouds. It teaches you to carry an umbrella. When Musonius sat down to a bowl of plain lentils, he wasn't pretending they tasted like a feast. He was practicing a radical act of attention, noticing how little the body truly needs to thrive, and how much freedom comes from disentangling joy from extravagance. Modern research echoes this. Studies on hedonic adaptation show how quickly we normalize luxuries. The thrill of a new car fades within months. The upgraded phone becomes mundane. But gratitude for basics: a functioning body, a safe place to sleep, a morning without pain retains its spark. So how do we cultivate this deeper appreciation? Start by listing 3 enoughs today. Not grand achievements, but the ordinary gifts we overlook. Your health, not perfect, but enough to walk under open sky. A meal, not gourmet, but enough to quiet hunger. A friend, not always available, but enough to remind you you're known. This isn't settling, it's grounding. The Stoics called it preferred indifference. You can prefer a raise or a warmer house, but your peace doesn't depend on them. When you anchor yourself in what suffices, you're no longer tossed by every unmet want. Think of a gardener who tends both roses and weeds. Toxic positivity would demand she ignore the thorns. Stoic gratitude lets her acknowledge them, then focus on the blooms already in her care. Your enoughs are those blooms. They don't erase life's struggles, but they nourish the resilience to meet them. Today, when you catch yourself chasing the next thing, pause. Touch the fabric of your shirt, taste the water in your glass, hear the breath in your lungs. These aren't small things, they're the quiet foundation of everything else. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal for 30 days. He didn't even journal for 30 years. He filled parchment after parchment with reflections until his final breath, turning philosophy into a daily dialogue with himself. That's the heart of Stoic resilience, not a sprint, but a marathon. In an age of 7-minute workouts and 5-step life hacks, we've been sold the myth that transformation happens in bullet points. But the Emperor's notebooks reveal a different truth. Real growth isn't about shortcuts. It's about showing up day after day to wrestle with the same questions in ever-deepening ways. Consider how modern self-help markets resilience. Scroll through any app store and you'll find promises like build unshakable confidence in 2 weeks. Or master your mindset with this 10-day challenge. There's nothing wrong with quick wins, but the Stoics would caution against confusing a spark with a sustained flame. Imagine trying to train for a marathon by sprinting once and calling it enough. The body and the mind strengthens through repetition, through the accumulation of small, consistent efforts. When Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one," he wasn't suggesting a one-time performance. He was advocating for the slow, steady work of aligning actions with values over and over until it becomes your default setting. This doesn't mean progress has to feel grueling. The magic lies in micro-habits, tiny, sustainable practices that compound over time. Start with something as simple as a nightly pause to ask, where did I practice patience today? When did I confuse what's urgent with what's meaningful? No elaborate rituals, no perfect prose, just a minute or two of honest reflection. The key isn't the length of the session, it's the consistency. Think of it like brushing your teeth. Skipping one day won't cause decay, but the habit over decades preserves something vital. History offers a quiet contrast to our hack-obsessed culture in the life of Epictetus. Born into slavery, he didn't have the luxury of waiting for inspiration to strike. His philosophy was forged in the daily grind, choosing dignity when others expected despair, finding agency where none seemed to exist. His teachings weren't theoretical, they were survival tools honed through relentless practice. That's the gift of the long view. Resilience isn't something you achieve, it's something you live into, one ordinary moment at a time. So here's the invitation. Instead of overhauling your life overnight, pick one Stoic principle, say the Dichotomy of Control, and apply it deliberately for 30 days. Not as a test, but as an experiment. Notice how your relationship to frustration shifts when you ask, is this mine to solve? Observe how your mornings change when you begin them with gratitude instead of grievance. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness, because resilience isn't built in the grand gestures, but in the quiet, cumulative choice to meet each day with intention. The oak tree doesn't grow tall by rushing. It grows by standing firm through seasons of sun and storm, adding one ring at a time. Your resilience is no different. Every day you practice, you're not just preparing for the next crisis, you're becoming someone who no longer fears it. And that's how philosophy moves from the page to the pulse, from words written in ink to wisdom written in bone. Epictetus once told his students, if you wish to improve, be content to appear clueless or stupid in extraneous matters. That's a startling demand in any era, but especially today, when social media turns every opinion into a performance and every post into a plea for validation. The Stoic teacher wasn't advocating for ignorance, he was exposing the trap of applause. When we tether our self-worth to likes, retweets, or the approval of strangers, we hand them the reins to our inner peace. Imagine a charioteer so distracted by the crowd's cheers that he forgets to steer. That's the danger of outsourcing your worth to external metrics. Ancient philosophers wrote under pseudonyms or anonymously, not out of fear, but to let ideas stand on their own merit. Seneca published essays without bylines. Marcus Aurelius never intended his journals to be read. Compare that to today's digital arena, where follower counts and engagement rates dictate not just visibility, but personal value. The irony, many of history's most enduring voices Epictetus included were unknown or mocked in their time. Their work survived not because it trended, but because it resonated deeply with the few who truly needed it. This isn't a call to abandon social media, but to interrogate your relationship with it. Every time you hesitate before posting, wondering if a thought is smart enough or if a photo is curated enough, you're measuring yourself against an invisible jury. The Stoics would ask, who appointed these judges? Their verdicts vanish as quickly as they appear, like applause fading after a play. What remains is the integrity of your own mind. Here's a revealing exercise. Pick one action you've avoided or exaggerated because of others' potential reactions. Maybe you didn't share an unconventional idea in a meeting. Maybe you scrolled through 5 filters before posting a sunset. Now imagine doing the opposite, not recklessly, but authentically. What if you voiced that thought raw? What if you uploaded the unfiltered sky? The tension you feel isn't just fear of judgment. It's the friction between who you are and who you think you're expected to be. Practical detachment starts small. Try drafting a post or email with no intention of sending it. Write the vulnerable confession, the unpopular opinion, the joke that might not land. Then sit with it. Notice the urge to tweak it for palatability. That's the moment to ask, am I refining this for clarity or contorting it for approval? The difference is everything. Epictetus, born a slave, knew freedom couldn't be found in others' opinions. His classroom had no metrics, no algorithms, just students willing to face uncomfortable truths. Today's equivalent might be creating something no one sees, or deleting an app not out of frustration but liberation. Because validation is a thirsty companion. The more you feed it, the more it demands. But self-respect, that's a well that never runs dry. Imagine standing at a crossroads where one path leads to a secure but unfulfilling job, while the other wins toward passion but uncertainty. This isn't just a career dilemma, it's a test of values. The Stoics faced similar choices, not with spreadsheets or pros and cons lists, but by asking a radically different question: which option aligns with the person I aspire to be? Seneca, in his letters to Lucilius, cut through the noise of external rewards with a simple guideline. If you wish your worth to be known, be worthy of yourself. That's the essence of Stoic decision-making, measuring choices not by their outcomes, but by the virtues they express. Wisdom and courage aren't abstract ideals here, they're practical filters. Wisdom asks, does this choice reflect my deepest understanding of what matters? Courage demands, am I acting from conviction or convenience? Picture a musician torn between a stable office job and the precarious pursuit of art. The conventional approach might weigh salary against happiness, but the Stoic Reframe shifts the focus. Which path cultivates the qualities I admire: perseverance, authenticity, resilience? The answer won't magically erase uncertainty, but it anchors the decision in something steadier than fleeting emotions or societal expectations. Seneca's own life exemplified this. As Nero's advisor, he navigated the temptations of power by continually asking whether his actions served justice or merely his own safety. When he eventually defied the emperor, it wasn't impulsiveness, it was virtue in motion. Modern dilemmas may lack imperial stakes, but the principle holds. A corporate lawyer considering a pivot to environmental advocacy might fear the pay cut, but the Stoic question isn't, can I afford this? It's, can I afford to betray the version of myself that cares about sustainability? Here's how to practice this. Next time you're stuck between options, try the wisest self exercise. Close your eyes and visualize the person you're working to become. Not richer or more famous, but wiser, kinder, more integrated. Now ask, what would that version of me choose? Notice how this bypasses superficial metrics. The secure job might still win, but now for a deeper reason. Perhaps because it funds your child's education, aligning with your role as a provider. Or the risky passion project might feel right, not as rebellion, but because it honors your commitment to creativity. The real power of this approach. It turns decisions into identity-shaping moments. Every time you choose based on virtue, you're not just deciding what to do, you're reinforcing who you are. And that's how Stoicism transforms crossroads from sources of anxiety into opportunities for self-creation. The path itself matters less than the footprint you leave on it. Think about the last time you found yourself locked in an argument with someone you love. Maybe it started with a thoughtless comment, a forgotten promise, or simply the stress of daily life boiling over. In that heated moment, it's easy to fall into the trap of believing happiness depends on the other person changing. But Stoicism offers a different path, the realization that while you can't control their words or actions, you hold absolute authority over your own reactions. Epictetus, who taught that even in chains we can be free, put it bluntly, people are disturbed not by things but by the views they take of them. That's the key to transforming conflict, shifting focus from what they should do to how you choose to respond. Picture this scenario: your partner snaps at you after a long day. The Stoic approach wouldn't ignore the hurt, but it would ask two questions before reacting. First, is their mood within my control? The answer, of course, is no. Second, what is mine to steward here? Your breath, your tone, whether you escalate or create space, these are your domains. This isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about directing them wisely. Imagine responding not with equal sharpness, but with measured calm. I hear today was tough. Let's talk when we're both ready. That simple pivot from demanding change to governing your own conduct can diffuse tensions that might otherwise spiral. Epictetus took this further with a challenging idea: love like a willow tree, not an oak. Willows bend with storms without breaking. Their roots hold firm while their branches yield. Applied to relationships, this means cherishing deeply but clinging lightly, not to people, but to expectations. You can love someone wholly without requiring them to fulfill every need or conform to your ideal. When a friend cancels plans, the Stoic practice isn't to stew in resentment, but to examine your own attachment to their presence. Does your peace really depend on their attendance, or can you adapt without collapsing? Now let's role-play a tough conversation using Stoic principles. Imagine your sibling borrowed money and hasn't repaid it. The conventional approach might begin with accusations. You're so irresponsible. But Stoic framing shifts the script. Start with what's incontestable, your own stance. I lent you money because I care. The lack of repayment makes me hesitant to trust. How can we resolve this? Notice the difference. You're not controlling their response. You're owning your experience and inviting collaboration. If they react defensively, the discipline deepens. Their defensiveness is their territory. Your patience is yours. This philosophy doesn't guarantee harmony. People are unpredictable, but it does guarantee something more profound. Your stability isn't held hostage by their choices. Seneca, who wrote beautifully on friendship, advised, associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The mutual improvement he describes isn't about fixing others. It's about creating relationships where both parties take radical responsibility for their own growth. So the next time friction arises, try this experiment. Pause and silently recite Epictetus' 3 questions. What's within my power here? Am I loving freely or possessively? How would my best self engage? The answers won't erase conflict, but they'll reveal a path where dignity isn't sacrificed to drama. Because the goal isn't to craft perfect relationships, it's to become someone who navigates imperfection with grace. The hour before sleep isn't just downtime, it's sacred space for the Stoics, a nightly laboratory where you distill wisdom from the day's chaos. Seneca, who once wrote letters by flickering lamplight, ended each evening with a ritual we'd do well to steal. He'd retrace his steps like a detective reviewing case files, asking not just what happened, but how did I meet it? His question wasn't about productivity or achievement. It cut deeper. Did I live today as the person I claim to be? Imagine applying that litmus test now, not with guilt but curiosity. That tense work meeting, did you respond with patience or posturing? The stranger you passed on the sidewalk, did you see a human being or an obstacle? This isn't self-interrogation, it's gentle accountability, a way to align action with aspiration. Modern sleep hygiene obsesses over blue light filters and magnesium sprays, but the Stoics targeted a different disruptor, the untended mind. Picture the average pre-sleep routine scrolling through headlines that spike cortisol, or replaying arguments with imaginary comebacks. Seneca would call this mental arson, pouring fuel on the very fires you're trying to extinguish. The screen's glow isn't the real problem. It's the emotional residue left by unprocessed experiences. Contrast that with his practice. Lighting a candle, our modern equivalent, might be a salt lamp or dimmed bulbs, and revisiting the day's scenes with compassionate detachment, like a director analyzing footage. Here's how to adapt this tonight. Set a 5-minute timer after brushing your teeth. Sit somewhere that isn't your bed, a chair, a floor cushion, and ask 3 questions. First, what tested my values today? Maybe it was biting your tongue when a coworker took credit, or choosing the gym over happy hour. Second, where did I act out of character? No shame, just noticing. Perhaps you laughed at a cruel joke to fit in. Third, what one choice tomorrow would make me prouder? Keep it small. I'll pause before reacting when my kid spills milk. That's it, no journaling required unless it helps. The goal isn't to craft perfect prose, it's to signal to your brain that the day's ledger is closed. The magic lies in the consistency, not the duration. Even on exhausting nights when you manage just 60 seconds, this practice builds what psychologists call cognitive closure, that elusive feeling of mental tidiness that lets sleep settle in. Notice how different this feels from the default drift into distraction. Instead of numbing yourself with sitcom reruns, you're conducting a subtle transfer of power from the day's chaos to your core intentions. And over time, those nightly micro-reflections compound. You start spotting patterns, maybe your patience phrase when you skip breakfast, or your integrity feels clearest on mornings you exercise. Seneca's letters reveal a surprising truth. His evening reviews weren't solitary. He often shared them with friends like Lucilius, not as boasts or confessions, but as mutual tuning forks. Here's where I stumbled. How might you have met this? Try this with a partner or roommate. Spend 5 minutes trading today's lessons over herbal tea. You'll discover something profound. Vulnerability, when stripped of drama, becomes a lullaby for the soul. The screens will still beckon tomorrow, but tonight the Stoic invitation stands to fall asleep not drained by the world, but anchored in yourself. Cleans, the philosopher who succeeded Zeno as head of the Stoic school, didn't spend his days lecturing from an ivory tower. He paid his rent by hauling water through Athens as a manual laborer, his hands calloused and his back bent under the weight of clay jars. When students mocked him for this humble work, he'd reply, "Even if my body is strained, my mind grows stronger." That image, a thinker sweating in the sun, captures a truth modern fitness culture often misses. Physical endurance isn't just about building muscle, it's about forging willpower. The Stoics saw the body as a gym for the soul, a place to practice discomfort voluntarily so you're unshaken when life imposes it involuntarily. Think about your last workout. How much of it was spent counting reps or calories burned, and how much focused on cultivating mental resilience? Modern exercise science confirms what cleans knew instinctively. Physical strain releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein that strengthens neural pathways just as weights strengthen muscle. But the Stoics took this further. They viewed every drop of sweat as a metaphor. When your legs burn during a sprint, that's not just lactic acid. It's your chance to observe how you meet struggle. Do you grit your teeth with resentment or breathe through it with focus? The choice trains more than your quads, it sculpts your character. This shifts the purpose of exercise from aesthetics to epistemology. Marathon runners know that wall at mile 20 isn't just physical. It's where the mind decides whether to surrender or persist. Weightlifters understand that the final rep, the one that trembles, is where discipline overrides instinct. Even yoga's held poses become laboratories for observing patience. The common thread, each practice mirrors life's larger tests. A missed promotion feels lighter when you've practiced pushing through fatigue. A heated argument stings less when you've learned to steady your breath under strain. Here's the challenge: next time you exercise, add a layer of intentionality. As you lace up your shoes, set an intention like, "Today, I'm strengthening my resolve as much as my body." When fatigue hits, don't distract yourself with music or mantras. Lean into the discomfort and ask, what does this teach me about perseverance? Notice how your mind negotiates with exhaustion. That negotiation is Stoicism in motion. Cleans didn't carry water to prove his humility. He did it to remind himself that effort, when met with awareness, becomes alchemy. Your workout can do the same, not just shaping your physique, but tempering the inner steel you'll rely on when life demands more than you think you can give. Seneca never saw a smartphone, but his essay on the shortness of life reads like a prophecy for our distracted age. Life is long enough, he insisted, if you know how to use it. Imagine what he'd say about our daily ritual, unlocking a device designed to hijack attention, then wondering where the hours went. The average person spends nearly 4 years of their life scrolling. Not creating, not connecting, just mindlessly grazing on content that leaves them emptier than before. This isn't just wasted time, it's a rebellion against our own mortality. The Stoic remedy: treat your attention like the finite resource it is. Every thumb swipe is a vote for what kind of mind you're cultivating. Enter the Stoic scroll rule: only consume what educates or elevates. Picture your phone as a library, not a slot machine. Would Seneca binge watch reaction videos or save his focus for lectures that stretch his thinking? The rule isn't about deprivation, it's about alignment. Follow the chef who teaches you to cook, not the influencer staging rage for clicks. Subscribe to the historian unpacking ancient battles, not the comments section fueling modern ones. This shifts scrolling from passive consumption to active curation. Your feed becomes a mirror. Is it reflecting your values or eroding them? Start with an app audit this week. Pick one platform where time evaporates, maybe Instagram, maybe YouTube. For 7 days, track not just how long you use it, but how it uses you. Notice the emotional residue after each session. Do you feel inspired or agitated, curious or comparing? The goal isn't to shame your habits, but to expose their hidden cost. Like a Stoic accountant, you're auditing attention expenditures. That viral dance video might entertain for 3 minutes, but what did it displace? A chapter of a book, a moment of stillness. Seneca warned, you're afraid of dying, but how can you be sure you've ever lived? Practical tweaks make this sustainable. Turn your home screen into a Stoic toolkit. Move time-sucking apps to a folder labeled Distractions, leaving only tools and nourishing content front and center. Set a 5-minute timer before opening any social platform. When it dings, ask Epictetus' question, is this essential? You'll often find the urge has passed. The deeper shift happens when you replace scrolling with creation. Instead of watching travel reels, sketch that itinerary you've postponed. Swap political rants for writing one thoughtful paragraph about civic duty. The irony: Seneca's Rome had its own distractions: gladiator games, chariot races, endless banquets. His critique wasn't about leisure, it was about letting trivialities crowd out what gives life weight. Your phone isn't the enemy, mindlessness is. So this week, let every scroll pass 3 filters. Does this expand my understanding, strengthen my character? or serve a genuine need, the answers will surprise you because time isn't short, we just keep giving it away. Seneca once wrote a letter to his friend Lucilius that contained a line so countercultural it still shocks the modern ear. True wealth is wanting little. Not earning more, not investing smarter, simply wanting less. In a world where entire industries exist to manufacture desire, where ads whisper that happiness lives in the next purchase, this Stoic redefinition of prosperity feels almost revolutionary. Picture two neighbors. One works 80-hour weeks to afford a luxury car that loses value the moment it's driven off the lot, while the other finds contentment in a modest sedan and the gift of evenings spent reading with her children. The Stoics would say the second holds real riches, not because she settled, but because she identified the true currency of life: time, autonomy, and peace of mind. Musonius Rufus took this further, turning minimalism into a moral practice. While Rome's elite gorged on imported delicacies, he ate simple barley bread, not as a stunt, but as a reminder that needs are few and wants infinite. His teaching cuts to the heart of consumerism's lie, that accumulation equals security. Modern psychology confirms this, showing how the thrill of a new purchase fades within days, while the stress of managing clutter and debt lingers for years. The minimalist ethos isn't about deprivation, it's about subtraction as liberation. Every possession you don't crave is a chain you don't wear. Here's the challenge hiding in plain sight: we're often more attached to our things than we realize. That designer watch you had to have, it might be costing you more than its price tag in mental energy, in fear of loss, in the subtle pressure to maintain an image. The Stoic antidote isn't to abandon belongings, but to interrogate their hold on you. Try this exercise. Pick one possession you'd hesitate to give away. Maybe it's a phone upgraded yearly, a closet of unworn shoes, or even a sentimental heirloom gathering dust. Hold it and ask, if I lost this tomorrow, would it diminish my character? My joy or just my comfort? The answer reveals whether you own the object or it owns you. History offers a quiet masterclass in this through the Roman general Scipio Africanus, who returned from conquering Carthage, the wealthiest city of its time, with nothing but a single lamp for his household. When citizens mocked his lack of plunder, he replied, "I prefer to enrich Rome, not my home." His wealth wasn't in vaults, but in the freedom to walk through markets untouched by envy. That's the Stoic edge. When you stop measuring prosperity by externals, you become immune to their loss. So where does this leave us in a world of Black Friday stampedes and influencer hauls? Start small. Next time you're tempted by a sale, pause and apply Seneca's filter. Is this filling a need or feeding a want? Notice how often marketing conflates the two. Then practice the art of enough. Brew tea in your oldest mug and savor its familiarity. Wear the coat that's lasted a decade and appreciate its loyalty. True abundance isn't found in the next purchase, it's uncovered when you realize you already hold enough. Marcus Aurelius never wanted to be emperor. When the crown was thrust upon him at age 40, he saw it not as a prize but as a duty, one he approached with the same discipline he applied to his morning meditations. While lesser rulers built golden statues of themselves, he slept on a military cot during wars and sold palace treasures to feed the poor during famines. His reign offers a masterclass in Stoic leadership, the art of wielding power without being poisoned by it. In an age where leaders often confuse authority with superiority, his journals reveal a startling refrain: see yourself as you are. Not as infallible, but as human, charged with service, not servitude. Modern leadership often falls into two traps. The first is ego, the belief that titles confer wisdom. Picture the CEO who silences dissent in meetings, or the politician more invested in polls than principles. The second is reactivity, lurching from crisis to crisis like a ship without a rudder. Marcus faced barbarian invasions, a devastating plague, and betrayals, yet his writings show a mind as steady in storm as in calm. When advisors urged brutal reprisals against rebellious provinces, he chose reconstruction over retaliation, asking, "What will serve Rome's long-term strength?" That's the Stoic difference. Leadership isn't about proving your might, but stewarding what's right. Consider the contrast with today's boardrooms and headlines. A tech founder berates employees for lack of hustle, while his own insecurities drive burnout culture. A community organizer escalates every disagreement into a public feud. Stoicism would diagnose these as failures of perspective leaders who have forgotten that influence is a loan from those they serve, not a personal possession. Marcus modeled the antidote, daily reminders of mortality. You could leave life right now, and fallibility. Today I shall meet interference, ingratitude, insolence. These weren't morbid thoughts, they were grounding wires preventing the spark of arrogance. The practice is simpler than it sounds. Start by distinguishing your role from your identity. A title like manager or parent describes what you do, not who you are. Marcus signed letters simply as Caesar, stripping away the trappings of divinity other emperors claimed. Next, adopt the view from above, a visualization exercise where you imagine looking down on your challenges from mountaintop height, that urgent email thread. From this vantage, it's a speck, the colleague who slighted you, a fleeting interaction in a shared journey. This isn't about minimizing responsibility, it's about maximizing clarity. Now apply this to self-leadership, because every great leader first masters their own mind. When stress mounts, ask Marcus twin questions. What's within my control here? And what does wisdom require of me? Maybe it's pausing before a heated reply, or admitting you lack expertise instead of bluffing. History remembers Marcus not for conquests, but for the quiet moment he pardoned a traitor, saying, "We must forgive those who stumble in darkness." That's the ultimate Stoic leadership test, measuring your actions not by how they elevate you, but by how they illuminate others' path. The true mark of authority isn't obedience, it's the dignity you inspire in those you lead. Death meditation might sound morbid at first glance. Why dwell on endings when life offers so much to savor? But the Stoics weren't fixated on death for its own sake. They saw it as the ultimate clarifying lens. Seneca put it bluntly, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." We postpone dreams, cling to resentments, and waste hours on trivialities, forgetting that time is the one currency we can't earn back. Memento mori, remember you must die, isn't about fear, it's about focus. Imagine holding an hourglass where the sand represents your remaining days. How many grains would you let slip while arguing online, or replaying an old slight, or scrolling mindlessly through feeds? Take procrastination, that project you've delayed, the conversation you've avoided. What if you knew your deadline wasn't years away, but weeks? Seneca's insight, life is long if you know how to use it, cuts through excuses. We blame not enough time while squandering it on distractions that leave us emptier than before. A student facing final exams doesn't dawdle on trivial games, they prioritize with razor clarity. Death meditation applies that same urgency to ordinary days. The writer delaying their novel, the parent putting off a heart-to-heart. When mortality whispers, now or never, suddenly the choice becomes obvious. Now apply this to grudges. Picture someone who wronged you years ago. How much mental real estate do they still occupy? The Stoics would ask, if this were your final month, would you spend it rehearsing old wounds, or would you choose to unshackle yourself? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The duration of your life is insignificant, yet you give it away as if it were everlasting. Holding onto anger is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to suffer." Memento mori turns resentment from a burden into a choice, one you can set down the moment you realize it costs you more than it costs them. Here's how to practice this without gloom. Each morning, ask, if today were my last month, what would I stop tolerating? What would I finally say or do, not as a hypothetical, but with tangible steps? That strained friendship, send the text, the creative project gathering dust, block an hour to begin. Even small shifts matter. Skipping the complaint-filled lunch conversation, or leaving work on time to watch the sunset. Death meditation doesn't demand grand gestures. It reveals how many ordinary moments are actually extraordinary when seen through the lens of finitude. The paradox, confronting mortality doesn't shrink life, it expands it. When you stop pretending time is infinite, you start noticing the poetry in a shared meal, the sacredness of a quiet morning, the fleeting beauty of a child's laughter. Seneca observed, "We are dying every day, but in that truth lies liberation. If life is already slipping away, why not live it with boldness and grace?" Your last month doesn't have to arrive for you to start living like it matters. The hourglass is here, the sand is falling, and the choice, as it always was, is yours. Stoicism wasn't meant to be practiced alone. Picture the Stoa Poikile, the painted porch in Athens where Zeno and his students gathered under the open sky, debating ethics while merchants and politicians bustled past. These weren't solitary thinkers hunched over scrolls. They were a community sharpening each other like swords on a whetstone. Fast forward 2,000 years, and we've replaced porches with podcasts, trading dialogue for monologues. The irony, the very philosophy that teaches interdependence, now often reaches us through screens, consumed in isolation. But here's the truth hiding in plain sight. Wisdom grows fastest when it's shared. Consider how differently ideas land when discussed face to face. Reading Marcus Aurelius' words about patience is one thing. Unpacking them with a friend who just navigated a layoff transforms theory into lived truth. The Stoics knew this. Seneca's deepest insights came through letters to Lucilius, not private musings. Their correspondence was more than advice, it was accountability. When Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make you better," he wasn't suggesting passive admiration. He meant the friction of honest exchange, the friend who asks, "Did you really act with virtue there?" Or the study partner who points out when you're confusing Stoic acceptance with resignation. Modern life has fractured this communal wisdom. We curate social media feeds to avoid dissent, mistake algorithm bubbles for genuine discourse, and substitute likes for real conversation. The cost, echo chambers where Stoicism gets reduced to Instagram, quotes about controlling emotions, missing the discipline's gritty heart. Rebuilding philosophical circles doesn't require marble columns, just a coffee shop table and the courage to ask, how did you practice the dichotomy of control this week? Start small. Text one person today with this prompt. Let's discuss a Stoic idea over coffee, no expertise needed. Pick a single passage, maybe Epictetus on dealing with rude people or Musonius Rufus on voluntary discomfort. Share where you struggle, listen without fixing. Notice how the act of articulating wrinkles in your understanding smooths them. Ancient study groups debated hypotheticals like, if you could save only your brother or a great philosopher from drowning, which would you choose? Not to find answers, but to reveal assumptions. Your modern version might be, when did I last confuse preferred indifference with true needs? The magic lies in consistency, not grandeur. A biweekly video call with 3 friends dissecting Seneca's letters. A workplace lunch group analyzing Marcus' journal entries. even a family dinner where everyone shares a Stoic win. Maybe your teenager remained calm during soccer tryouts, or your partner responded to criticism without defensiveness. The format matters less than the intentionality. Like the Roman soldiers who recited philosophy around campfires, you're not just exchanging ideas, you're fortifying each other for life's battles. History offers a quiet lesson through Antonia Minor, Emperor Claudius' mother and a Stoic practitioner. She hosted gatherings where politicians and slaves debated as equals, an unthinkable act in rigid Rome. Her circle proved wisdom isn't hierarchical, it's relational. Your version might be co-workers, gym buddies, or parents at school pickup. The invitation isn't to lecture, but to witness each other's growth. When a friend admits, "I snapped at my kids and regretted it," don't quote Epictetus, ask, "What would loving fate look like in parenting tomorrow?" This week, turn one conversation into a Stoic exchange. Not a performance of knowledge, but a mutual excavation. The cashier complaining about her shift, instead of nodding along, gently wonder aloud, what part of this could we control? The colleague venting about management. Offer, "I've been practicing focusing on my response, want to try it together." Community isn't built in grand declarations, but in these small, shared moments of returning to what matters. The porch may be gone, but the practice remains. We don't just study Stoicism, we live it through each other. We've traveled far together through these Stoic teachings, from the dusty streets of ancient Athens to the noisy chaos of modern life. But here's the quiet truth at the heart of it all. Stoicism isn't about erasing life's storms. It's about learning to stand steady within them. Think of these principles not as a cure for hardship, but as a compass, one that doesn't promise calm seas, but ensures you'll never lose your way, no matter how rough the waves. Every challenge you faced, every setback that's left you breathless, hasn't been an interruption to your life. It's been the training ground for the resilience you're building right now. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned enslavement into enlightenment, left us with words that cut to the core. It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters. That reaction isn't about suppressing emotion or pretending everything's fine. It's about reclaiming your agency, the space between what life hands you and what you choose to do with it. Maybe today that means pausing before snapping at a loved one, or reframing a disappointment as raw material for growth. Maybe it's as simple as taking a deep breath when the world feels too loud. Here's where the real transformation begins, not in grand gestures but in daily practice. Before this video ends, pick one Stoic tool to carry into your week. It could be the morning reflection that sets your intentions, the evening review that harvests lessons from the day, or even the 5-second pause before reacting to a provocation. Don't try to master them all at once. A philosophy isn't a sprint, it's a lifelong marathon. Start small, but start today, and remember, you're not alone in this. Drop a comment below sharing which practice you're committing to, or a moment when Stoic wisdom already guided you without you realizing it. Your story might be the compass someone else needs. If this conversation resonated with you, consider subscribing. We'll keep exploring these timeless ideas together, turning ancient insights into modern strength. Because the world doesn't need fewer challenges, it needs more people who meet them with serene resilience. And that, more than anything, is a choice within your power.